Okay guys, so I'm on a timer. Everything gets a bit more frantic. Back to the good old Dr. H fails days. Let's get them all. Gotta catch them all before the timer runs out. Don't get hit by that damn thing. Oh, can I get round? Can I get round? Can I get round? Can I get round? Yes! You win. Okay guys, so what I'm going to show you today in this tutorial is how to finish up a simple game like this, or like the Carnival game that we've been working on. At the moment this game doesn't really offer too much challenge. If I play it I can run around and I can collect the spheres, but there's nothing really stopping me from doing that. There's no real way to lose the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some obstacles and I'm going to actually make them stop the player. So I was thinking back to those old games that I used to play when I was a kid, those really, really fatal kind of punishment games. You put 1 foot wrong, your character's dead instantly. So I'm going to show you how to create one of those things first of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 3D sphere here, and I'm just going to put it on the end of the object. I'm just going to raise it up so it's part of the object, and I'm going to grow it so it's slightly bigger than the object. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to make it a child of this object, and just so I don't lose track of what's what, I'm going to call this kill sphere. So I know that is now my kill sphere. Now because I'm a little stinker, I'm going to turn the mesh renderer off. So this is an invisible sphere, so the player doesn't know it, but if they get this close to the end of this object, they're going to get killed. So it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's also warning them in a game with plenty of space to give these things a really wide berth. So now I've got my kill sphere, I need my kill script, which I've already written here. So I'm going to attach my kill script to my kill sphere, and let's go and see what's in the kill script. So obviously I'm going to use function OnTriggerEnter because I've just created this lovely trigger system here. I've made it a trigger. Actually I haven't made it a trigger, but I will do so now. I'll make the sphere collider a trigger. There. What's the size of the sphere collider? Yeah, it's the same size as the object. Good. So that is now a trigger, so I can use OnTriggerEnter. So let's think about what I want to do. Well, I want this to be really, really evil. I'm going to put one of these at either end of all all six, I suppose, all 6 ends available here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that if I hit any of these things, it's game over. Just restart the game. Just completely restart the game from scratch. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to make access of something called scene management, and then dot scene manager dot load scene. Capitals where I've got them. So scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and then which scene are we going to load? Well, we're going to load whatever the name of this scene is, and this scene you can see here is called collection, capital C. So I'm going to put collection in there, and then I'm just going to put a semicolon afterwards. So what this is basically saying it'll do is if I hit any of these objects, it will reload this level from scratch. Let's go and test this and see what happens. Okay, so I collect 1. Nice and easy. So a couple of quick things worth pointing out. If your restart isn't working properly, there could be 2 reasons for this. I'm going to get into the build settings in a moment, but it might be that your error is coming up that the game has not been added, the level has not been added to the build settings. If that's the case, you can just go File, Build Settings, and then literally drag this scene in there. You can drag all the scenes that you want in there. You don't have to click build yet. In fact, don't click build yet because that'll do other things. I'm just going to cancel this down. So if you're getting the build error, then this is how to fix it. So the other error that you might get when you restart the game is that something funny happens with the lights. So if when the game restarts all the lights are out or it's really, really, really dark, that can be fixed by going into the lighting tab here, going down to light maps and just de-checking this auto box. You can see I've already done it. If you check it, then you might get errors like this. You can see it's running these jobs here. If I just de-check it and click build, what this does is it bakes the lights onto the scene. And like baking, something we'll go into in a later tutorial, but like baking means that that will fix the problem that you had. It will render the lights once at the start, and they won't render. You won't start the game with the lights switched off. Uh-oh. Okay, so 2 things. It has worked. It sent me back to the start. But the problem is, I've kept my score from the previous game. That's a big no-no. In order to fix that, I'm going to go into, I'm just going to get rid of my page turner and Khan script because I don't need them anymore. I'm going to go into my GM script here, and I'm going to make use of function start. And I'm going to say every time the game starts, score equals 0. So every single time the game starts fresh, score is going to equal 0. Let's go and test this one more time. So go and collect my 1 and then get killed. And the score goes back down to 0. That's absolutely perfect. That is the way I want it. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do, because I'm a real stinker, is I'm going to duplicate that and I'm going to put it at the end of there as well. Got a quick top-down view, make sure it's halfway across. So that's really going to kill my player now. If they go anywhere near those things, that's going to kill them. Now what I could do is I could duplicate this out and have it on here. But I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to have different obstacles that do different things. So let's come over here. First of all, if I want it to do a different thing, I think it's only fair that I point that out to the player that this one's different. So I'm going to use a different color. And if I just go into the shader of this, I'll use the yellow, grab the hex code, and I'm just going to change the color of the light above it so that it doesn't look weird. Paste that in there. So what this is going to do is this is going to have, if I create a game object around the central cylinder, I'm also going to create a sphere, but this is going to be slightly different. This sphere is going to be as big as the whole object, or nearly as big as the whole object, so you don't want to make contact with it at all. Turn the mesh renderer off, and obviously turn the trigger on. But this is going to be a basic damage script. And of course, I'm going to attach the sphere to this cylinder here, so it's child of the cylinder. And I'm going to attach the damage script to the sphere down here. Can't add script, haven't written it yet. That happens sometimes, don't worry, I'll fix that. So what I'm going to do in the damage script, I'm going to use onTriggerEnter again, because it's a really useful function for these sorts of games. OnTriggerEnter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, if the player enters that trigger, they need to lose a certain amount of health. Now, in order for this to work, they have to have health in the first place. And health is generally stored in the GM script. So just like I've done with score, I need a static variable because I want another script to access it. So I'm just going to write another script here. I'm going to call it static variable health. And this is going to be a float. Could be whole numbers, but I like the option to work with decimals. So now in damage script here, I can say that if the player enters the trigger, obviously their health, current health, equals whatever their old health was minus, I don't know, 20. Okay. So if I now go back into my GM script to test this, I'm going to need to give them some kind of health at the start. Just like I've said at the start of the game, the score is 0. At the start of the game, the health is going to be, I don't know, 50. And also, because it's a little unfair to give the player health and not let them know how much health they've got, I'm going to put another function in my onGUI. Just going to paste that in down there, except instead of saying score, it's going to say health. And instead of displaying the variable score, it's going to display the variable health. And I'm going to want to put this, well, where was the other one? 40. So let's put this one 70 down on the screen like that, because that one's at 40 and I don't want it to be too close to one another. So if I now go and test this, push play, I'm going to miss the red one, make a beeline straight for the yellow one. I've got an error. Oh, of course I have. So this doesn't know what health is because health is in the GM script. So it needs to be underscore gm.health and underscore gm.health. Make sure the damage script is attached to the sphere. I'm going to call this one damage sphere because it's starting to get a little bit messy in there and I want to know what does what. That's the damage sphere, and let's go and see if I can get damaged. Let's make a beeline straight for the yellow. Go! I've taken 20 damage. Go! I've taken another. Oh, I should be dead by now. So obviously we're going to need to add a couple of clauses in here into our scripts. I think the first thing that we'll add is in function update. We'll put this in the GM script in function update because I think it's a good place for it to be stored. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say if health is ever lower than or equal to 0, and then I'm just going to copy that into there, restart the level. Let's go and test this. Okay, let's make a beeline straight for the yellow. I get hit once, I get hit twice, I get hit a third time, it takes me back to the start of the game. Okay, fantastic. So it's important in the script that you put the less than symbol before you put the equals. If you put them the other way around, then it won't work. Okay, so the second issue here, I quite like this. I quite like this, that this does damage. But the second issue is I kind of want the damage to be something that the player can move in and out of. So it's not just binary. It doesn't just happen when you move in there and that's it, you lose the health. I want it to be kind of continuous damage loss. So this is why I've used a float for the health here. So what I'm going to do in the damage script, instead of just saying that it's -20, is I'm going to say that it's -20 times time dot delta time. Now, what this will mean is that it will take away 20 units of health continuously over time. Let's just go and see if there's any issues with that. Okay. Let's get in there and see what happens. Be careful, I'm hunting rabbits. Oh, shit. Okay, so the problem here is that it is taking off 20 health, but that it's only doing it when I enter the trigger. And what I really need here is to use a different function called OnTriggerStay. So if I drop in now, you can see it counts down quite a lot. Obviously, because I'm using decimals, there we go, I'm dead. Obviously, all those decimals on the screen don't look great, but in a later tutorial, we might look at like adding a health bar, so it's a nice, neat bar. But that, I think, is a better form of damage than the other one. So I've got one that ends your life, and I think I'm going to have two that don't end your life. So let's delete this one and just bring this one, duplicate back into the scene, and start it at a different rotation point, just so it looks like they are rotating out of sequence. Okay, so the final little thing we're going to do is we're going to add a timer. Now I could do this straight into the GM script, but because I want to keep things simple, I'm not. I'm going to create a new script from scratch, new JavaScript, and I'm going to call this script timer. As always, because it's going to display some information on the screen, I'm going to need to attach it to the thing with the camera on, which is the first person player. So the first thing we're going to need to do is I'm going to need to create a timer, and I'm going to decide how long that timer is. I'm going to make it 15.0, and that's obviously going to be seconds. The player has 15 seconds to run the level. We can test this in a second. We can even add another variable in later on. So obviously, because it's a timer, it needs to take place inside function update. But I think there's a fairly good chance that I'm going to want to display it on the screen as well. So I'm also going to need function on GUI. Save. So what I want the timer to do is I want the timer to count down. So timer minus equals time dot delta time. That's going to make the timer count down in real time. Obviously, if the timer reaches 0, we need to do something about that. So if timer is ever less than or equal to 0, and then we're just going to get the good old-fashioned start the game again, players run out of time, reload the level. Okay, let's just test that, save that, see if we get any errors. Unexpected token 15. Okay, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in and I'm just going to make that a float, and then I'm going to go into Unity and I'm going to control that asset in the Unity window, which is really how you want to do it anyway, because 15 seconds might not be enough. It might be impossible to get around in that time. And you don't want to be bouncing back and forth between your script in order to get this to work. So start off with 15, click save, and go back and check that console. No errors so far. Okay, click play. Okay, obviously I can't see the timer, but that's not a problem. So the timer seems to be up and running. Let's see if we can get the timer to display. So again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the same box here as the win score so that the timer can go in the space that the win score is in. So instead of saying you win here, I'm not going to put anything. I'm not going to put any text in there at all. So the final little thing you need is to say plus timer.toString, and then 0 is the string that's going to go in there. I've got one. Let's just enter that down. I've got 1, 2 brackets coming in, 3 brackets coming in, 1, 2, 3 brackets coming out. So don't worry that this bit says plus here, because it says minus up here. That's going to take the time away in real time. So let's test this and see if I can collect everything. Oops, I said time. I should say timer. If you can't spell, you can't script, as I frequently say to my students. Okay, wow, the timer's ticking. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to run out of time. Okay, 15 seconds may be a bit ambitious to get everything done. I've got full health. I've got full health. No! Okay, so 15 seconds is way too ambitious. All right, okay. So because 15 seconds is a variable that is in the timer here, I can just change it. Let's put it up to 25, which I think will probably be too easy. Okay, I got 25 seconds. Let's do this thing. Gotcha. I missed it. I'll get it on the way back. I'll get it on the way back. Oh, you see, everything becomes way more frantic when you've suddenly got a timer. And simple things like picking up... Dude! Okay, guys. So, I'm on a timer. Everything gets a bit more frantic. Back to the good old Dr. H fails days. Let's get them all. Gotta catch them all before the timer runs out. Don't get hit by that damn thing. Oh, can I get round? Can I get round? Can I get round? Can I get round? Yes! You win. Okay, so the you win message is coming in the wrong place now. So I'm just going to move that out to the side slightly. You win 150 plus the 10 that's there. Let's make it 100. Let's just make it 200. So the you win is going to come out 200 to the side. So it's going to be by the side of my timer. And one of the other things I'm going to just do, because I didn't really know what that was, I'm going to put time left in there, just so the player knows, save that, just so the player knows what that thing is as soon as it starts counting down. And there we go, time left, you can see that's counting down. That works quite nicely. I'm not going to frantically dash around that again. So there's only really one thing left to show you. Once you've got a game that you're happy with, I mean, we could tweak this endlessly. We could put extra things to collect, extra obstacles. We could put a skybox. We could put all sorts of features in here. And in later tutorials, I'll show you how to add things like particles, particle effects, and moving enemies, and even maybe to create a basic first-person shooter style game. However, for now, let's turn this into a game. So earlier on, you saw me messing around with the build settings. I'm just going to go into the build settings here. The build settings is where you build your game. So all you have to do is you drag in all of the scenes, all of the levels that are in your game. You drag them in from down here. So I could, for example, where I'm using the script to reload this level, I could, if the player gets 10, load another level and just change the name of the level that's being loaded from collection to whatever the name of the next level is. Obviously, if I've got 3 or 4 or 5 levels and I'm moving on using this load scene system here, then I'm going to need to put those in my build here. However, for now, just going to focus on the build settings for this one level here collection. So the first and most important thing is to choose your platform. So your platform options will depend on the version of Unity you have installed, but generally speaking, you want to build it for whatever you've made the game on. So if you made it on a PC, you want to build for PC. You can see I made it on a Mac, so the default here is to Mac. I can't even change this around. I can change those options. I'm not going to. I kind of want it 64-bit. So obviously, if you've built in things like touchscreen controls, or if you've built in things like a controller, then you might use one of these options down here and build for one of these other formats. I'm going to build for Mac, and nice and simply, I'm just going to build and then run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this collection, and I could store it with the rest of my assets. That's probably a good convention to go into, but for me here, just so it's easier to find, I am going to go and I'm just going to put this on the desktop right here. Build my collection, save it, and then once it's built, because I click build and run, it will run the game. Otherwise, if you double click it, you can run the game. In a later tutorial, I'll show you how to add icons, graphics, make it look all kind of fun, and how to add a loading screen at the start. Okay, so you can see build successful. It's loading it up here. Collection. Got lots of options in here. I'm going to play on good, I think, just because I don't want to crash my system. And there you can see, there's my game. Full time, real time. I'm moving around, I'm taking damage. Ooh, don't want to do that. I'm going to try and avoid that. And definitely avoid that. And that. Oh no, I forgot! Okay. Alright guys, I hope you have enjoyed this. I'm just going to skip out of this for a second. Command Q to quit it. I hope you have enjoyed these tutorial sessions. I've certainly enjoyed making them. And I do hope you will tune in for further tutorials. Do please put something in the comments section if you want me to show you how to do anything else in Unity. And as always, do please hit subscribe. It means a massive amount to me for just a little click. It's really important. Thank you very much for coming with me on this Unity tutorial. And I hope to see you again for future tutorials.